The rumors that the White House is reportedly worried about the president having to run against Joe Biden, especially in the Rust Belt. So why does it seem the president is already embracing him as the Democrats' nominee? Hello and welcome to Fox News at Night. I'm Shannon Bream in Washington. We begin tonight with the growing backlash over Rudy Giuliani's announcement that he is heading to Ukraine. The president's critic says it looks a whole lot like enlisting the help of a foreign power to help the president get reelected. All right, we're going to talk live to Rudy Giuliani in just a minute. But first, correspondent David Spun is here to fill you in on the controversy. Hey, David.
Hey, Shannon. Happy Friday. This is interesting. We see a lot of things in Washington, but in this case, Rudy Giuliani is essentially opening up his playbook for all to see. He's on the record encouraging Ukraine to get involved in issues that help his client and friend, the President of the United States. At the same time, Giuliani is calling for an investigation that could hurt Democratic frontrunner Joe Biden. Rudy Giuliani is heading to Ukraine with two key missions in mind. First, he wants to investigate if the Democratic National Committee and Hillary Clinton may have worked with Ukrainians to reveal damaging information about former Trump campaign chairman Paul Manafort, with hopes that it would help Clinton with her White House bid. The second Giuliani objective involves trying to get Ukraine's president-elect to investigate Joe Biden's son Hunter's involvement in an energy company, something Biden joked about last year.
I looked, I said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Oh, son of a got fired. And they put in place someone who was solid at the time.
What he's referring to is a prosecutor, the chief prosecutor in Ukraine, who he wanted fired.
Investigative journalist Peter Schweitzer says Biden was threatening to withhold $1 billion in loan guarantees from the United States if they didn't drop the probe.
Here's the problem, Shannon. That prosecutor was investigating his son, Hunter Biden, who was on the board and was being paid by Burisma, a natural gas company that had been started by a former government minister, very corrupt entity.
With Giuliani bringing those allegations back up by looking at the DNC in Ukraine, he's creating a new firestorm.
For about 15 minutes before the show started, trying to figure out how I could say on family-friendly television, how the bleep is this happening?
He'll come back with something blurry and confusing and ambiguous, and he'll turn it to the president's advantage because that's what he did all through the campaign, if not outright lying.
Democrats are calling for a Senate panel to investigate.
It's corrupting fundamentally the foreign policy of the United States to serve the personal interest of the president. That's really scary stuff.
It's a betrayal of democracy to work with other countries to affect our elections. It's just a flat-out betrayal.
Senator Chris Murphy writing, quote, "It is deeply concerning that a private emissary of the U.S. president is reportedly encouraging a foreign government to investigate an American citizen." Politico is reporting President Trump has said it would be appropriate for Attorney General William Barr to investigate the Hunter Biden situation. We reached out tonight, but no word from the Biden campaign or the DNC. Shannon.
All right, David, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, Fox News confirms tonight that the White House reached out to Don McGahn, asking him to publicly state that the president did not obstruct justice. Soon after last month's release of the Mueller report, special counsel to the president, Emmett Flood, contacted former White House counsel McGahn regarding that request. McGahn's lawyer tells our John Roberts tonight, quote, "We did not perceive it as any kind of threat or something sinister. It was a request professionally and cordially made." By the way, McGahn elected not to speak publicly on that issue. Okay, so the president's personal attorney heading to Eastern Europe to encourage a foreign government to press ahead with an investigation or two that may very well damage a political rival of his client. We're talking about Joe Biden. Well, tonight, there are calls for a Senate investigation and more. So let's ask the man himself, the president's personal lawyer, Rudy Giuliani. Mayor, great to have you with us tonight.
How are you, Shannon?
I'm good. Now, listen, you've heard a lot of the questions about why you're doing this and whether it's okay.
Sure. Oh, my gosh.
I want to read you something from the New York Times. Won't surprise you that they're not fans of this idea.
Oh, my gosh.
I know,
that should
you're
be really
surprised.
objective. That should be really objective.
They say Mr. Giuliani's plans create the remarkable scene of a lawyer for the president of the United States pressing a foreign government to pursue investigations that Mr. Trump's allies hope could help him in his re-election campaign. And it comes after Mr. Trump spent more than half of his term facing questions about whether his 2016 campaign conspired with a foreign power. So,
Wow.
Mr. Mayor, let's start with the optics.
Well, that really turns it around. I mean, the reality is that I wasn't going there to encourage them to start an investigation. They have an investigation.
They have an investigation of how Ukrainians helped the DNC and Hillary operatives to get, in some cases, false, dirty information about the Trump campaign. In one case, an absolutely, completely falsely created book that's already been determined by Ukrainian courts. There was a great fear that the new president would be surrounded by literally enemies of the president who were involved in that, and people that are involved with other Democratic operatives, and one particular oligarch who is quite corrupt, and that they would influence him. And I'm convinced from what I've heard from two very reliable people tonight that the president is surrounded by people who are enemies of the president and people who are, in at least one case, clearly corrupt and involved in this scheme. And it's really a shame. And the reality is this has nothing to do with the election of 2020. The election of 2020 is a long time from now. And if I wanted to meddle in that election, which I don't, I could have held this for a year and dropped it right before the convention. The reality is I came about this by accident investigating Ukrainian collusion with Democrats to affect the election and also to help create the false narrative against the president. And over the next 3 to 4 months, you're going to find out all about that, including the corruption that went on with the Steele dossier and the corruption that went on with Papadopoulos and the way he was set up. It's all part of one large conspiracy that has about 2 or 3 parts to it.
Okay.
So I've decided, Sharon, I'm not going to go to the Ukraine.
You're not going to go?
I'm not going to go because I think I'm walking into a group of people that are enemies of the president, in some cases enemies of the United States, and in one case an already convicted person who has been found to be involved in assisting the Democrats with the 2016 election.
Okay, so
a gentleman, I'll give you his name.
Your decision not to go. Your decision not to go.
Let me finish. A gentleman by the name of Lyshenko,
yes,
who supplied a black book that was found to be fraudulent and never used because it was a fraudulent, incriminating statement that was totally untrue.
Okay, so how much does your decision not to go to the Ukraine, have to do with the pushback and the blowback from people, including, we've got Senator Chris Murphy basically demanding that the Senate Foreign Relations Committee open an inquiry into your
Well, I wish they would,
there.
actually, because I would then be able to lay out the unbelievably incriminating evidence about members of the DNC, members of the Clinton campaign, who were involved in gathering information there that was negative to the Trump campaign, including a meeting at the National Security Council in January of 2016, in which people in the Obama administration asked for negative information about Trump, and they asked Ukrainian officials for that. That's all a matter of record in the Ukrainian investigation that they are trying to have quashed now for the second time. Joe Biden succeeded in doing that in 2016. It was reopened 2.5 months ago, and they're trying to quash it again. At the time that Joe Biden did it, his son was under investigation for getting something like $3 to $10 million from a crooked Ukrainian oligarch who was hiding in Russia. And he got it while Joe Biden was the vice president of the United States and was in charge of relations with the Ukraine. And in that tape that you saw, Joe Biden had the prosecutor general dismissed. And then the case against his son was dropped.
Let me ask you about this, because there are questions.
Wait. That stinks. The facts are stubborn. And eventually, this is going to have to be investigated.
Okay. Well, Vanity Fair
I will
says
get
this.
out of it in order to remove any political suggestion.
Okay.
I will step back, and I'll just watch it unfold.
Okay. So no trip on Sunday. No trips to Ukraine.
No trips because I believe I was walking into a bunch of people, one of whom already has been found to be involved in this that I wasn't aware of, and I think this was a setup.
Okay.
And the whole thing, by the way, is a setup from the very beginning. And that's what you're going to find. It goes back to at least January of 2016 when they decided that they should deal with the Ukraine. You're also going to find, I think, that some of the Steele memorandum was written in the Ukraine. After all, Steele didn't go to Russia for 9 years. How could he have written a memorandum about Russia if he hadn't been there for 9 years? And how could Comey have accepted it as true without asking him that?
Okay, let me ask you about something here.
You phone call for intelligence information?
I don't know, because I'm not a spy. I don't know how that works. But let me ask you this. I want to give you a chance to respond to the former top lawyer at the FBI, James Baker, today about this idea that there was some kind of coup underway or that there was malevolent bad action by people against the president then as a candidate. This is what he said today about that idea.
All right.
There's no way in hell that I was going to allow some coup or coup attempt to take place on my watch, or any conspiracy to do anything unlawful. No way.
Mary says it's just, there's no there.
Well, that's what Peter Strzok said about the first counterintelligence investigation of President Trump. And then they went ahead in a second one anyway. So I don't know, the FBI statements at that level, these are the politicians at the top of the FBI. Baker is not an FBI agent like the guys I work with in New York or in Washington in the street who find these guys to be, kind of like slimy politicians. So I don't know if Baker's telling the truth or he isn't. But there's no doubt, I don't know about a coup. A coup is a very big word. There's no doubt that when Comey signed that affidavit, using the Steele dossier,